Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Amy, and I'm here to bring Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach, Chapter 6 and 7 to you. Now, remember, boys and girls, Miss Amy does not own the rights to this book. She just owns the book, and she's so glad she gets to share it with you. Now, yesterday when we left, of course, in Chapter 5, we saw that James took that bag of those beautiful, wiggly green stones and crystals and he kept them for himself. But that older man warned him. Now remember, stranger danger. Don't accept things from strangers. But this is a book, so we're just going to go along with it. He accepted that bag and was warned, do not let these seeds fall anywhere and don't let anybody else consume them, because if you do, all the wonderful magic in them is going to go into the item or go into the person that takes them. Now, boys and girls, James, we know, has the worst luck ever. He was walking along, going back to the house, holding as tight and as cautiously as he could to that bag of stones and crystals, and sure enough, he tripped right over the peach tree's roots and down spilt out all those beautiful stones and crystals. And of course, as James went down to reach in and get them off the ground, it began to eat them up and swallow them. That's right. Those seeds and those stones and the crystals just sunk right down in the ground. You know James had to be discouraged. And then, of course, the lovely Aunt Spiker and Sponge had to come in and start yelling at him, calling him lazy, and told him, guess what? You're going to get back to work, and we're going to put you in a well when you're done. Oh, yeah, they're such great aunts. Oh, poor James. Anyways, I'm just hoping that in chapters 6 and 7, because these are such small chapters, something good happens. Maybe something peculiarly good will happen to James, huh? So let's go ahead and crack open that spine, and let's go ahead and get into chapter 6. Now remember, I don't own the rights to this book, and I may have already said that, but I'm just glad that I own the book and can share it with you. Pretty sure I already said that, but just in case. Chapter 6. Sponge! Sponge! Come here at once and look at this! At what? It's a peach! Aunt Spiker was shouting. A what? A peach! Right up there on the highest branch. Can't you see it? I think you must be mistaken, my dear Spiker. That miserable tree never has any peaches on it. There's one on it now. Sponge, you look for yourself. You're teasing me, Spiker. You're making my mouth water on purpose when there's nothing to put into it. Why, that tree's never even had a blossom on it, let alone a peach. Right up on the highest branch, you say. I can't see a thing. Very funny. Ha, ha, ha. Good gracious me. Well, I'll be blowed. There really is a peach up there. A nice one, too, Aunt Spiker said. A beauty! A beauty, Aunt Sponge cried out. At this point, James slowly put down his chopper and turned and looked across at the two women who were standing underneath the peach tree. Something is about to happen, he said to himself. Something peculiar is about to happen any moment. He hadn't the faintest idea what it might be, but he could feel it in his bones. Ooh, that something was going to happen soon. He could feel it in the air around him, in the sudden stillness that had fallen upon the garden. James tiptoed a little closer to the tree. The ants were not talking now. They were just standing there, staring at the peak. There was not a sound anywhere, not even a breath of wind. And overhead, the sun blazed down upon them out of the deep blue sky. It looks ripe to me, Aunt Spiker said, breaking the silence. Then why don't we eat it? Aunt Sponge suggested, licking her lips. We can have half each. Hey, you, James, come over here at once and climb this tree. James came running over. I want you to pick that peach up there on the highest branch, Aunt Sponge went on. Can't you see it? Yes, Auntie Sponge, I can see it. And here is a picture of James and Auntie Sponge and Auntie Spiker looking up into the peach tree. They don't ever want him around unless they have something for him to do they, boys and girls? And don't you dare to eat any of it yourself. Aunt Spiker and I are going to have it between us right here and now. Half each. Get on with it. Up you go. James crossed over to the tree of the trunk. Stop! Aunt Spiker said quickly. Hold everything! She was staring up into the branches with her mouth wide open and her eyes bulging out, though she had seen a ghost. Can you bulge your eyes out? Look, she said. Look, Sponge, look! What's the matter with you? Aunt Sponge demanded. It's growing, Aunt Spiker cried. It's getting bigger and bigger. What is? The peach, of course. You're joking. Well, look for yourself. But my dear Spiker, that's perfectly ridiculous. That's impossible. That's... Now, wait just a minute. No! That can't be right. No! Yes! Great Scott, the thing really growing. Really is growing. It's nearly twice as big already, Aunt Spiker shouted. It can't be true. It is true. It must be a miracle. Watch it. Watch it. I am watching it. Great heavens alive, Aunt Spiker yelled. I can actually see the thing bulging and swelling before my very eyes. Now, isn't that a little peculiar, boys and girls? Have you ever watched a peach grow in size right before your eyes? Those peculiar occurrences might be occurring now. Chapter 7. The two women and the small boy stood absolutely still on the grass underneath the tree, gazing up at this extraordinary fruit. James's little face was glowing with excitement. His eyes were as big and bright as two stars. He could see the peach swelling larger and larger, as clearly as if it were a balloon being blown up. In half a minute, it was the size of a melon. In another half a minute, it was twice as big again. Just look at it growing, Aunt Spiker cried. Will it ever stop? Aunt Sponge shouted, waving her there's that word again, waving her arms and starting to dance in circles. Woo-hoo! Dancing in circles, the sponge is dancing in circles, watching the peach grow. All right, enough silliness, Miss Amy. And now it was so big it looked like an enormous butter-colored pumpkin dangling from the top of the tree. Get away from that tree trunk, you stupid boy! Ugh, another yucky word. Aunt Spiker yelled. The slightest shake, and I'm sure it'll fall off. It must weigh 20 or 30 pounds at least. Wonder why she's concerned. I mean, have they showed any concern for this boy? I mean, maybe she's concerned she's about to lose her whipping boy. I don't know. But she don't care a hoot for James as far as we know. So let's just see if there's a reason why Miss Aunt Spiker even cares if this peach falls. It's probably because she's selfish and wants it to keep growing. Let's see. The branch that the peach was growing upon was beginning to bend over further and further because of the weight. Stand back, Aunt Sponge shouted. It's coming down. The branch is going to break. But the branch didn't break. It simply bent over more and more as the peach got heavier and heavier. And still it went on growing. In another minute, this mammoth fruit was as large and round and fat as Aunt Sponge herself, and probably just as heavy. Now, maybe they want to take this to the county fair. You know, they used to have fairs. They might still do it at the fairs where the biggest pumpkin or squash or whatever gets a prize. Maybe that's why they're concerned about James. We know it isn't for his well-being. Please, mean old aunties. It has to stop now, Aunt Spiker yelled. It can't go on forever. But it didn't stop. Soon it was the size of a small car and reached halfway on the ground or to the ground. Both aunts were now hopping around and around the tree, clapping their hands and shouting all sorts of silly things in their excitement. Hallelujah! Aunt Spiker shouted. What a peach! What a peach! Terrific! Aunt Sponge cried out. Magnifico! Splendifico! And what a meal! It's still growing. I know! As for James, he was so spellbound by the whole thing that he could only stand and stare and murmur quietly to himself. Now, spellbound means like in shock, kind of like surprised or don't want to take your eyes off, like, ooh, what's going to happen next? And murmur means, kind of something under your breath. Murmuring. Murmuring. Let's see what he murmured. What did James murmur? Oh, isn't it beautiful? It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Shut up, you little twerp! They have the worst words. Aunt Spiker snapped, happening to overhear him. It's none of your business. That's right, Aunt Sponge declared. It's got nothing to do with you whatsoever. Keep out of it. Oh, boys and girls, are they right? Did it have nothing to do with James? Nothing to do at all? Look! Aunt Spiker shouted. It's growing faster than ever now. It's speeding up. I see it, Spiker. I do. Bigger and bigger grew the peach. Bigger and bigger and bigger. Then, at last, when it had become nearly as tall as the tree that it was growing on, as tall and wide, in fact, as a small house, the bottom part of it gently touched the ground, and there it rested. Here's a picture of the tree with the big old peach, and there's the ground. It can't fall off now, Aunt Sponge shouted. It stopped growing, Aunt Spiker cried. No, it hasn't. Yes, it has. It's slowing down, Spiker. It's slowing down, but it hasn't stopped yet. You watch it. There was a pause. It has now. I believe you're right. Do you think it's safe to touch it? I don't know. We'd better be careful. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker began walking slowly around the peach, inspecting it very cautiously from all sides. They were like a couple of hunters who had just shot an elephant and were not quite sure whether it was dead or alive. And the massive round fruit towered over them so high that they looked like midgets. Don't like that word either. From another world beside it. The skin of the peach was very beautiful, a rich, buttery yellow with patches of brilliant pink and red. Aunt Sponge advanced cautiously and touched it with the tip of one finger. "It's ripe!" she cried. "It's just perfect! Now see here, Spiker, why don't we go and get us a shovel right away and dig out a great big hunk of it for you and me to eat?" "No!" Aunt Spiker said. "Not yet." "Why ever not?" "Because I say so." "But I can't wait to eat some," Aunt Sponge cried out. She was watering at the mouth now, and a thin trickle of spit was running down the side of her chin. Ew, that's nasty. "My dear Sponge," Aunt Spiker said slowly, winking at her sister and smiling sly, thin slit smile. "There's a pile of money to be made out of this if only we can handle it right. You wait and see." And that's just what we're going to have to do, boys and girls. We're going to have to wait and see until tomorrow what happens in chapter 8. Now remember, boys and girls, I will also have my bonus reading tomorrow. So I hope you join me for my 2 books and my next chapter of Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach tomorrow. And I'm so glad that we are finally seeing something peculiar and maybe a little good happening in our James's life. Aren't you? All right, boys and girls, if you're watching this or listening to this before you go to bed, good night and sleep tight.